The Spin-off Podcast Network. Skinny are helping you show how smart you are with the 1Q quiz, an all-new, super challenging and super quick daily quiz built by the Spin-off. Every Monday, Skinny are giving you the chance to prove you're smart with the Skinny Extra Credit question. Get it right, and you'll get the chance to score yourself some Skinny Extra mobile credit, so you can text, call, or even video call your group chat and gloat about how big your brain is. T's and C's apply.
The Fold is brought to you by oOh!media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa. No mai hoki mai e mihi nei ko Duncan tōku ingoa. Welcome to The Fold. My guest today is Glen Kyne, who is the CEO of Discovery, the sort of the other half of the company that was formerly known as MediaWorks. And he's just had a huge day. Discovery's just had its first ever upfronts in charge of 3, and you'll have potentially heard a bonus episode of The Fold, which I recorded last week with Jane. And just a few hours ago, he essentially revealed to New Zealand what 3 will look like in 2022, and more than that, what the whole wraparound television and online ecosystem that goes around 3 will look like too. And basically, you can view 2021 as a bit of a holding pattern. It was largely shows and personalities and decisions made that were kind of current per the previous administration that were still rattling around. 2022 is when it all when you really start to see what Discovery as owners look like. Glen's a lovely guy. I first met him when we were making the spin-off TV for MediaWorks. He was head of sales then, and he was really had a really innovative mind and was really sort of interested in us despite our being a very small fish in his pond. I was really pleased to see him get the job after Michael Anderson. Discovery's had like a rough month, I reckon, in the sense that it's lost Tova O'Brien, Duncan Garner and Lloyd Burr to MediaWorks, which must be a bit of a hard thing to go through. But fundamentally, what today was, it was a reassertion of what it's going to be, and there's just a lot to discuss. Discovery is a much more reality and lifestyle type focused network. Anyway, I don't want to hold it up. There's a lot to talk about. I'm really excited to have Glen on. As always, I want to thank Vodafone for bringing us The Fold, and the spin-off runs on Vodafone's network technology. We're recording over it now, and it's absolutely a bedrock fundamental of our business. So if you're in the market for network technology, for really, really blazing fast and reliable internet for your business, go to vodafone.co.nz. This is Glen Kyne on The Fold. Tēnā koe, Glen, and welcome to The Fold.
Kia ora. Nice to be here, Duncan. Exciting day.
Yeah, hugely exciting. I mean, you've obviously been incredibly busy. I don't think I've seen this much motion from a network in any one year, maybe as long as I've been observing anyway. How are you feeling right now?
There's an element of relief, if I'm really honest. Excited, of course. I think there was some criticism that it's taken almost too long for us to speak openly to the market about our plans. But of course, when you look back over the last 12 months, there's been a phenomenal amount of work go into getting to this point today, and not just from a content strategy point of view, but all of our systems, our infrastructure. We've had a huge technology transformation. We've built new team structures. We've built a new culture. There's just been a phenomenal amount going from becoming what was the MediaWorks television business into now Discovery ANZ. And so really happy that we could get to the point and finally get some really exciting news out into the market.
What's the reception been like, internally and externally so far? Obviously, it's only a couple of hours, but have you got an early read?
I've just seen a text message from Mike McRoberts who says he's seen a lot of these things over the years, and this has been the most compelling that he's ever been a part of. as you can appreciate, I've been doing a few interviews, so I haven't engaged that directly with our team yet. Lots of text messages coming through, and I think I saw an email from our production team that I was particularly interested in reading, and it talked about the influx of calls from the production community, just so happy with the commitment that Discovery's making locally to the production environment. So that was really pleasing to see.
And upfronts, I've been involved in one and been to a lot of them. They seem, as someone who doesn't love to perform, they seem like an incredibly horrible thing to do. Was it worse without a crowd, or good to be able to at least do retakes?
If I'm honest, I hated the fact that we weren't able to get a crowd. We had ambitions 12 months ago of actually booking out Spark Arena, believe it or not, and turning that into quite an experience to do what we did today. So when COVID hit, we obviously had to pivot fast. But the team, I think you would agree, I think they did an extraordinary job, and don't like looking at myself on these screens, but I think the message was clear, and I think the team did as I said, a stellar job pulling our story together.
Yeah, absolutely. You bundled a huge amount into that sort of 45 minutes. Do you want to start off just by kind of telling me how the Discovery ownership has changed changed News Hub, and changed the culture of that former MediaWorks television business?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is it feels like, I transitioned both businesses, but it feels like we've always been owned by Discovery. And what I mean by that, there hasn't been this huge cultural pivot. We've really been allowed to, continue on with what is in the essence of DNA of Three. And that, as brings a lot of passion, a desire to fight and win in the market, and all of that good stuff. And so that's retained in the business. What's come with Discovery, I think, is a level of discipline around being very focused on what we do and what we don't do. We talk about global, the best of global and local. So Discovery allow us to be quite entrepreneurial in the region, to develop our own plan, our own strategy. We know the market best of what's going to resonate, but they bring global support and infrastructure and thinking to help support that strategy. And so, we feel in a really calm, confident place around where we are right now with Discovery, and a real ability to continue to grow and develop. And we know that we've got immense support from Discovery globally. And part of that is because we're in, a handful of actually now the biggest businesses in the world that Discovery operate, with the ANZ organisation. So,
speaking of that discipline about what you do and what you don't do, there was a real sense that that Three and the sort of the associated channels are very much committing super hard to reality and lifestyle programming in a way that there was a more sort of generalist feel before. The one kind of glaring absence was local drama and comedy, and there was a sense that there might be more announcements to come, and I'm aware that the New Zealand On Air deadline is December 1st, which might have something to do with that. But can there would have been a fear among certain parts of the local production community. Obviously, others are very excited to be making more lifestyle and reality and be able to send that out into the world. But, can you speak to where drama and comedy, which have been previously big local planks of Three's experience, where they sit for you now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, the lineup you have seen today has been about trying to select and present to the world what we think are winning formats. And we wanted to bring a diverse range of formats into market that span, much loved formats that we're bringing back like MasterChef, but also brand new content that New Zealand hasn't seen before with formats like Track. So we're really excited about that. We recognise that in comedy, we have lost ground in the last couple of years, and we want to get that ground back. Three was renowned as the home of comedy, and we want to bring that back to Three. And so the start of that today was about a change up to 7 days, moving it into the 7:30 slot, expanding it for an hour. And I think you can expect to see a lot more talent being rolled through that format, a lot more new talent, comedic talent coming into the format. So that's really exciting. We also, to your point, you're exactly right. There's a couple of funding rounds yet to come, and we're working really hard in the background around additional comedy formats. We've Guy Williams is still a big part of the stable in New Zealand today, and he opened the reel today, which was great. So we're grateful to him. But there's more work to do, and so we would hope that 3 again becomes the home of comedy. In terms of local drama, it's really important to us. It hasn't changed. We've had a lot of success in the past, and we want to have that success again. Drama, as you know, is the hardest format to make work these days with the prevalence of international drama coming in via streaming services. But we recognise it's still deeply important to reflect New Zealand stories through drama. So we are going to have more to say on that. We're not prepared to release that to the world just yet. We do have to go through some funding rounds, as you've pointed out. But we're committed to that, and we expect to see local New Zealand drama on screen next year.
I mean, one episode, I don't want to dwell on this because there's a lot of new news, but while we're here, Head High was a really well received and super important to those who worked on it drama and wasn't renewed for a 3rd season. Do you want to speak to that decision and how that fits into where 3 and Discovery are headed?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, like you, I loved the series. I thought it was fantastic, and I think one of the challenges for us, we're a commercial broadcaster at the end of the day, and we'd love to tell more stories, but commercially everything has to work. And Head High wasn't doing the job for us, frankly, that we needed it to do, and so that's why it wasn't renewed for a further season. I've been quite open with Andrew and had a good conversation with him about that, and I know he's commented through the spin-off as well. But going forward, as I said, we're committed, and I think one of the things that I draw your attention to is that over the last year, we have had to make tough decisions around our content and programming, and one of the reasons we've done that is we had to earn the right to make the investment decisions we've made today. And so that doesn't come with, putting every piece of content you've got on screen. That comes around making critical choices around the things that are going to get the best return, because ultimately we wanted to get to this point today where we could announce so much in new content.
When you look at TVNZ, which, like you said, has really gone hard on local comedy and on multi-night reality TV, is it a bit frustrating? You're like, but hey, guys, that's our strategy. That's literally our talent, a lot of the time.
Look, certainly in the comedy space, I think that's fair. I think, as I said, we've lost ground in the last couple of years, and I don't want to relitigate the journey that MediaWorks TV went on, but I can kind of understand why that happened. But I think we're in a different position now, and I think we're in a place where we can invest and bring a lot of that great content and talent back on screen. I think when it comes to lifestyle reality and those multi-night formats, the reality is, I look at Treasure Island, for example. They did really well. Great piece of content. I hope they will look at our content as well and look at it as around celebrating the best of New Zealand talent and the production community. And I think ultimately both of us are chasing audiences. That's good for New Zealand. It's good for the consumer. It's good for the production community. It's good to have 2 strong broadcasters in this market competing head to head. So,
looking at that new slate of reality, you've got a lot of really big kind of known quantity. Audiences love them. Reality shows returning. The block with a bit of a refreshed hook, The Masked Singer coming back after a really strong opening season. The new shows are, it's always a bit porous. What's reality? What's factual? What's lifestyle? But do you want to talk about the likes of Trackers and these shows and how they sort of point the way for a sort of a kind of a converging of classic 3 approaches with more of what Discovery knows how to do and to sell around the world?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think there may have been some assumptions that we were just going to release a whole bunch of Discovery formats. Clearly, we haven't done that. And the reason we haven't done that is it's about getting the best out of the local audience, right? And so with a brand like 3, it's a very broad general entertainment and news channel. It's a mass reach channel. And so we need formats and ideas and content that are going to work for the masses. And so we certainly have picked a couple of the Discovery formats that we think will work. And, My Town Takeover is a good example. We're in the In the US, it's called Hometown Takeover. It's a huge hit. And that's all about finding regional New Zealand towns, hero towns that we can go into and do a bit of a make-up job on those towns and bring some life and energy and inspiration into those towns. So that's, I guess, an example of taking the best of Discovery, localising it, making it relevant for a New Zealand audience. Equally, we've done things like we've brought the MasterChef back. It's been 5 or 6 years since it was last on screen. We have been really, first of all, it's the biggest food format in the world. So we've had a gap in terms of the genre lineup for food. Like, we haven't had a lot of food content on screen in recent years. Equally, we've been really encouraged by the reboot of the format in Australia in terms of how they've positioned it. It's very aspirational and optimistic, and we think there's a real place for that on New Zealand screens. And so we're excited to bring that back. But it is a mix. It's about trying to find the right local original IP ideas, the best local ideas, best global ideas that can work locally, and also leveraging the best we can get out of the Discovery universe. And I think on balance, we've got the mix right. Whether or not it all works next year, I'm sure you'll be watching and writing, and we'll see. What I would say about Tracked is it's the one format that got unanimously everyone excited that saw it. We haven't seen anything like that on screen. The idea of dropping a couple of international people inside New Zealand landscape, having them run for 24 hours to escape, professional trackers trying to get them, just the idea of it's quite exciting. So I think that's going to be great, and I think it'll have universal appeal.
The Fold is brought to you by oOh!media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa, with over 4,000 out-of-home advertising sites nationwide across both street furniture and retail centres. I'm super grateful to oOh!media for enabling us to make unmissable connections with Kiwis.
Raising capital or taking your business to the world? Investment Fix has the lowdown on everything you need to make it happen. This season, we're exploring the US market, the opportunities it offers, what it takes to grow a business there, and the best way to approach investors. Join some of the superstars of the investment and business world as they share advice from their time in the US so you can make your mahi count in this massive market. The Investment Fix podcast, brought to you by Invest New Zealand. Tune in today.
The one thing which has hard for you to admit, but certainly to my observation, is that there's been an underinvestment, it feels like, in technology, which is always a hard thing to do when you are essentially an independent and have private equity ownership. There was a big emphasis on 3Now in this presentation, both from a content side in terms of the volume and even having Heartbreak Island as an exclusive, but also around the sort of ad tech which underpins it, and TVNZ, through that underinvestment, and there's a whole lot of intricacies of this which we probably don't need to relitigate, but it has been able to get a bit of a local lead there. How important is it for your sort of longer term, more sustainable future to kind of be able to pour Discovery's technology and ad technology infrastructure into something like 3Now to kind of start to regain some of that momentum?
Yeah, I think it's fundamental to the long-term growth of the organisation. First of all, what I should say, the technology investment that's gone in has been quite vast into the organisation over the last 12 months, not just in 3Now. I think we had a lot of older legacy equipment and infrastructure that we have brought up to spec. We have best in class equipment, and increasingly moving our operations into the cloud to give us a lot more business resilience generally, and that's an important foundation to be able to then build and grow from. 3Now, frankly, Duncan, I don't think I'm giving any great news. It hasn't been up to par. It hasn't been at the standard it needs to be to keep pace with TVNZ On Demand. They've done, Kevin and the TVNZ team have done a great job. And so, yes, we need to do a better job. And there's 3 pillars really to that strategy. One is we need to increase the amount of endpoints that 3Now is accessible on, so that we have far more broader distribution and access to a bigger audience. Secondly is a a very focused choice to move away from being just a catch-up of 3 to being a destinational channel in its own right, where all of our free-to-air content there is, but also specific acquired content for that digital audience. And Heartbreak Island was the first announcement, obviously, of that strategy today. And then the user experience needs to prove it hasn't been up to speed. And so we've got to work harder to get a better user experience. And so we're going to do all of that over the next little while. I think when you look at the ad-funded video on demand market, there's really only 2 scale players in broadcast, us and TVNZ. And so TVNZ have taken the lion's share of that growth over the last little while. We think with an improved product, we can take some of that growth back over the next little while. Again, we think ultimately that's good for consumers and good for New Zealand. And when you look at that market, it's running at roughly a 20% CAGR long-term growth. That's a really healthy growth rate to invest into and get a return. And so we feel good about that. Equally, I'm anticipating one of your next questions might be about Discovery Plus and the global streaming plan.
We'll get to that. That's what I'm saving that for the last. Okay. I'm really excited about that. Honestly, this is Christmas for me. So let's talk quickly about Gusto, which I sort of was listening to the pitch for it, and I was like, movies, British drama, game shows, news, and I was like, oh, this sounds great, and then I was like, oh, that just sounds like your childhood. It was like hitting every kind of nostalgia beat, and then obviously I'm bang in the middle of this 40 to 54 demographic you're targeting. Is it being shaped around people who grew up in a kind of a slightly different television era and kind of giving them a sense of, even if it will necessarily be updated, this isn't Jones, but some of those kind of core threads that aren't necessarily as prominent in the multi-night reality TV era?
You and I are both in danger of revealing our ages here, because I'm also smack bang in the middle of that that demo. Look, yes, it's very targeted around 40 to 54-year-olds. And to your point, we saw an opportunity where that audience was underserved with a lot of that traditional content that they know and love, but is becoming harder to find. And so all of the strategies that we've announced today with our channels are very targeted around the target audience we're going after. Choice has done a really good job in the market and was a performing channel from not just an audience point of view, but also financially. It did really well. But we saw the opportunity to refresh it and really tighten the programming and the type of content that's going to appeal to that audience. We think that channel's got a really good shot at some long-term growth in it. One of the questions would be, does it still make sense to invest this level into traditional linear broadcast television these days? We wouldn't have done that if we didn't thought there was an opportunity to grow that audience. But of course, it has to be done in a targeted way. What we're not trying to do is build another TVNZ 1 or 3 or anything like that. What we're trying to do is build these highly targeted audiences. The other thing we've done when we've looked at these audiences is made sure there is a natural flow from linear through to digital, so we can capture them in 3 now in a meaningful way. And equally, we've looked at all the programming to make sure that it's commercially appealing, right? We want to make sure that, it's still going to appeal to the advertising community.
On some level, it is quite a narrow band, and I think that there was reference made to it being an underserved band, which I would argue is a reach in some respects. Is the targeting of it an admission on some level that, that what we've seen in surveys like New Zealand On Air's, where are the audiences, that the under 40s are getting, which is still like a 15-year band of 3's nominal target, that they are getting increasingly hard to hit through linear?
Well, there's no doubt that, the pattern of behaviour is changing. I think, I'm not going to reveal anything new by sharing that, right? That's a common truth now in the broadcast industry. I think what we've done with the targeting of our channels is made sure that we're not stealing channels from stealing audience from one another. And so if I think about 3, as you know, we came out a number of years ago and said we're the home of 25-54. Actually, internally, we're refining that even further to go, actually, it's 35-44 is really the key audience within that segment. Makes sense to extend 40 to 54 off the back of that, because there's still a lot of viewing happening in that audience. when you look at the performance of Bravo, it's grown well over the last 4 or 5 years. It's every year had increments in growth in terms of the audience share it's gaining. And we see a channel like Rush have been a natural companion. So if you mentioned Bravo leaning slightly into the female lifestyle reality, then we've got now a male lifestyle reality, right? So we think the partnership of the channel mix makes sense. And then, of course, HGTV has been the little channel that can, right? It's done incredibly well. It's got a really loyal audience. And Kiwis love, that a lot of that home renovation lifestyle content.
So let's talk quickly about news before we get into the sort of the big dreaming stuff of the merger. And we'll start with the glass half empty. What's your relationship with Cam Wallace like right now?
It's good. We've been talking for months, and I think at the heart of the question is obviously the announcement around MediaWorks. Obviously moving away from simulcasting the AM show and then creating their own news service.
Well, and particularly the talent swoop to Ghana almost seemed like it had reached a natural conclusion potentially, but to take Tova O'Brien and Lloyd Burr, who was in some respects looked a natural heir, it's very inconvenient.
Yeah, so there's a few things there that I'll unpack. So. When the business was sold 12 months ago, there were a number of agreements between the two organisations that were put in place for a reason. They were put in place to make sure that Discovery had time to become Discovery and forge its own path, but equally, MediaWorks without the TV assets wanted to be able to carve its own path in its future. And it's, been very clear, right, around the need to create a competitive talk radio brand in the market. And so we've seen the talent announcements. We've seen some of the moving parts moving towards that endpoint. We haven't seen the final realisation of that, but that hasn't come as a surprise to us. We have seen that as an opportunity because if I think about a show like the AM show, it's been simulcast for a long time. It was world leading, right? In I think 2015 or 16 when we launched it, been simulcast across TV and radio and digital. But actually, when we look at it today, we've got a real opportunity to have a broadcast video presence that's quite unique, visually very, very appealing. I'm not sure if you saw the brand today, you probably did. An opportunity to rebrand it slightly, new look, new set. We're investing quite a bit of money into a new set.
That's incredible. It's really, really. I think that's probably no disrespect to the host, so I'm sure it'll be great. But the setup feels like a very big move on for the whole market. Super
excited about that. There's benefits of that set into our 6 p.m. news product, our flagship as well. The talent piece. Super excited with how Ryan has been performing. He's just such a talented broadcaster. We are genuinely excited for New Zealand to see Mel and Ryan together. They are going to be electric and dynamic and fun. Everyone's going to enjoy that. We've got a couple more announcements to come, obviously, around talent in that show. But around talent generally, we've been, and this, I think, we've been an incubator of talent for a long, long, long time. I think 3 has done a fantastic job, and News Hub have done a fantastic job of identifying talent and giving them opportunities, whether it's sending them to foreign postings or putting them through the press gallery, etc., and creating, profiles that New Zealand love and trust. That hasn't changed and won't change. We're going to continue to do that. We've brought Irene Kaipra into the rank involved this year. She's done an incredible job reading our news bulletins during the day and have contributed more broadly to News Hub. Sam's coming back from maternity leave in the new year, so we're excited to see her back. Laura Tupou, I think, has been a phenomenal talent on the project. She just resonates. Isn't she amazing, right? She just resonates so strongly. And so we are taking, Laura's going to have a baby. I think we all know that. But when she comes back, she is going to join the 6 p.m. team with Tom McRae at the weekend, so we're excited about that. And we're going to find some new talent to put into this new broadcast on Gusto that's going to go on at 8 p.m. for News Hub. So we're going to continue to develop talent. Duncan, make no bones about it. We are excited with the breadth and depth of talent we do have. We think they're doing a phenomenal job, and there's more opportunities now today than ever.
Conscious that we're running out of time, but I want to quickly talk about that new 8 p.m. bulletin, and in some ways that's a bridge into the next thing. You're now doing 3.5 hours of news programming a day, if I've got that right, or might be 2.5. But either way, it's it's a significant volume. And at what point are you sort of starting to look at the rest of the schedule and go, is there a 24-hour news opportunity here? I mean, most markets have them, and once you're starting to join them up, like to put some talk in there, you've launched these channels. Obviously, it's not a cheap thing to do, but it's not as expensive as it once was, especially if you look further over the horizon with CNN potentially becoming part of the bigger whānau.
Yeah, I think, first of all, the amalgamation of news content's not all sitting on one channel. Admittedly, the majority of it is clearly on three. I think many of the shows have their own personality, so I think AM Show clearly has its own very distinct new look, feel, vibe now going forward, which is great.
Actually, it's 6.5 hours. You did right. 6.5 hours. I mean, come on. It's even easier.
The news bulletins during the day for 3 are really important. I mean, it's, we're straight down the barrel with the camera, with trust and integrity and information out to that audience. News Hub Late is going to look and feel a little bit different. We're going to renew that, refresh it, give its own look and feel, and clearly the Gusto Bulletin is going to feel a little different. And so we're creating product that we think is going to appeal to the audience at the time of when they're engaging with that content. So it's not all going to look and feel the same. Your question about 24-hour news is fascinating because one of the very first questions that I got asked globally by Discovery is, do you think we could stand up a 24-hour news channel in this market? And I think the answer is yes. I'm certainly not announcing that we're doing that today, by the way. But I think the point here is the desire to consume news and analysis and opinion is higher, and every year seems to get higher still. So I definitely think there's a space in the market to find dedicated news and current affairs content to service that need. We're certainly not planning on doing that in 2022, but I think that's going to be an ongoing discussion for us as a company.
Love to hear that. Okay, I'm conscious that we're already over time, but let's talk about quickly about the Warner merger. What is the current state of it, and were that to go through, what would that do to what is already quite a sort of a strongly, quite a reinvigorated channel and business?
It's so exciting. It really is. When you think about the scale of content that merged organisation will be able to produce every year, it's mind-blowing. It really is, and across every genre and format. The reality is, unfortunately, Duncan, I can't talk a lot about that merger right now, and I know that's disappointing. But we're working through the US regulatory process. We need to make sure we don't get too ahead of ourselves in talking about, those plans and the deal. But what I can say is that, the deal's progressing well, and we expect it to close sometime around the middle of next year. And so I think any meaningful conversation around the new organisation will happen at that point.
So the subscriptions is one thing you mentioned, and that's a whole different business model, and one which is becoming increasingly important to media. Have you started to play around with the numbers? Because that is almost the missing piece for you, really, in terms of right now you've got a lot of things which have moved into the future, but if you can get that combination of subscriptions and advertising, a sort of an AVOD, SVOD situation, suddenly you can start to look decades into the future rather than just years.
Yeah. So, currently we're a participant in linear free-to-air broadcast. We're a participant in pay television, obviously with our partnership with Sky. We're a participant in the broadcast video on demand market with 3Now. And yes, we want to be a participant in the paid streaming part of the market. We're not announcing anything today. We're not ready to announce anything, but clearly Discovery globally are a major participant in that space with the rollout of Discovery Plus. And so I think more exciting things for us to chat about in the new year, but know that we do want to be a participant in that space.
Thanks so much, Glenn, and congratulations on today. A landmark in the new era. So, well done. Thank
you so much. Nice to chat.
That was The Fold, brought to you by our partners at oOh!media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa. Huge thanks to oOh!media for sponsoring this episode of The Fold and enabling us to make unmissable connections with Kiwis.
Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tamaki Makaurau, Jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today. The Spin-off Podcast Network.